In the world of pro wrestling, there are terms that are used interchangeably backstage, and even a few of us smarks or smart marks have gotten to realize some of these terms thanks to listening to shoot interviews and podcasts from different wrestlers and things of that nature. Two of the terms that seem to be thrown around sometimes are work and shoot. A work means it's predetermined. The match was supposed to go exactly the way it was written, the way it was scripted and everything. But every once in a while, a wrestler gets mad at another wrestler and says, "Oh, I really don't like that guy." Or a wrestler gets mad at a promoter. Or a promoter gets mad at a wrestler. A promoter may tell another wrestler, one wrestler, to cripple another wrestler or do something bad to another wrestler. That is what we call a shoot. Well, this, my friends, is a shoot on Hoax of the Century, which purports to claim that the Patterson-Gimlin film is a hoax. Yeah, we'll see about that.
The name is Bigfoot. Whereabouts? Unknown. Throughout the ages, thousands claim to have seen it, from the forests of Northwest America to the Himalayas. Yet in all this time, no hard evidence of its existence had been found. But on a...
Okay, first of all, in the Himalayas, it's not called Bigfoot, it's called the Yeti. So why don't we get that out of the way and get that straight, first of all.
October 20th, 1967, two men, Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin, went riding in the forest near Bluff Creek in Northern California and encountered a big, hairy creature walking upright like a man. Bigfoot. They grabbed their movie camera and shot one sensational minute of footage that became known as the Patterson-Gimlin film. This film and encounter became the Bible for Bigfoot believers everywhere, and no one since has presented such compelling evidence. Experts from all over the world have studied this film frame by frame, hoping to learn more about the creature. But what people don't know is that the Patterson-Gimlin film was an absolute fake.
Or so you say. Okay, now read this little teaser they have here. Now the real story behind the myth of Bigfoot, a myth that has survived for more than half a century. It's the story of a practical joke that gave Roger Patterson the opportunity of a lifetime. Well, now, Tom Biscardi is one of the co-producers on this particular venture, along with John Johnson. Now, John Johnson has made it clear that he thinks the whole subject is a myth. The entire subject of Bigfoot. That's all full of hoaxery. It's all full of trickery. Biscardi, on the other hand, he is definitely in the camp of, yes, Bigfoot is real. He claims to have seen a few of them. But he thinks the Patterson-Gimlin film is a hoax, and that's where this documentary came about. Which is interesting because Johnson used to make documentaries for M.K. Davis and for others, and he would interview others, and he maintained that Bigfoot was real and the Patterson-Gimlin film was real. I just wonder what changed his mind. Where did he make that 360-degree turn, or maybe that 180-degree turn? Suppose we'll never know.
Ray Wallace was the kind of guy that liked to leave an impression in the Bigfoot world. I mean literally leave impressions. Hundreds of them possibly, maybe more. The Wallace legacy begins in Laird Meadow in Six Rivers National Forest in California. Wallace worked building roads for the U.S. Forest Service. It was in Laird Meadow where people discovered certain things about Wallace's roads that set them apart from others. These things were tracks, large tracks, Bigfoot tracks, he claimed, that walked along the side of the road everywhere Wallace went, in essence following him from place to place.
Is there any evidence whatsoever that on any of these road construction sites, and on any of these jobs, other than in Northern California in 1958, is there any evidence that these footprints followed him anywhere else? Any? Is there any evidence? I have not seen any evidence. And he may have made a few hoax footprints, but he didn't make all the footprints. You know, a lot of them were real. Although John Johnson wants you to believe that they're all hoax, and they all were made by Ray Wallace, which is ridiculous.
Along with Wallace's roads, he created something much larger than that and larger than life itself, the myth of Bigfoot. He even claimed that he had a baby Bigfoot locked in a...
He did not create anything. He didn't create the myth of Bigfoot. Bigfoot stories were going around long before Ray Wallace ever came along. So that's crap right there. That's absolute crap. You know, and Johnson seems to be buying into the crap. Oh, Ray Wallace created Bigfoot. No, he didn't. Bigfoot was around long before Ray Wallace.
Box. Here's what he wrote to the Calamity Courier, October 1st, 1969. Bigfoot used to be very tame, as I have seen him most every morning on the way to work. I would sit on my pickup and toss apples out of the window to him.
Oh, and by the way, Ray Wallace never tried to fool anybody. Ray Wallace never tried to hoax anybody. He was a practical joker. Everybody knew his stuff was crap. Everybody knew that though that was his wife in those films that he took. Everybody knew that all the footprints that he was claimed to have made were hoaxes, and they were easily distinguishable from the real thing. He never tried to fool anybody.
He never did catch an apple, but he sure tried. Then, as he ate the apples, I would have my movie camera clipping off more footage of him. I've talked to several movie companies about selling my movies, which would last for 3 hours. The best offer I've had so far is $250,000. With Wallace, it was a family affair. This is a shot from one of his movies of his wife in a Bigfoot outfit.
And he never hid that fact. He never hid that fact. I mean, he was a practical joker. His wife was in on it, yes. And he's never denied that. That was revealed after he passed away.
It's likely that Wallace made every one of the tracks seen in this footage, and perhaps a lot more that we haven't seen.
Yep.
After the death of Ray Wallace in 2002, the family of Wallace went public with claims that he had started the Bigfoot phenomenon.
Yeah, his family came forward. Ray Wallace never admitted anything. Now take a look at this right here, or take a look at these. What Bill Miller did, and I thought it was a great thing that he did, he took the photograph, one of these photographs of these Ray Wallace fakies, and he took he took several different types of photographs of footprint casts, and they were all various lengths, various widths. Made them all the same length, made them all the same width as this, and put them side by side for comparison purposes. And what he found was that all of the true and genuine Bigfoot footprint casts, you know, they looked genuine. This did not even match any of them. This did not match any of them. So this is another falsehood from Mr. Johnson here. None of them matched this. But this didn't match any of them.
With fake footprints made from a wooden foot-shaped cutout left in California sites in 1958. In addition, David Daegling stated that Wallace had a degree of involvement with the Patterson-Gimlin film and that this gave grounds for suspicion of it. The evidence for this involvement is Wallace's alleged statement. I felt sorry for Roger Patterson. He told me that he had cancer of the lymph glands and he was desperately broke and he wanted to try to get something where he could have a little income.
Having moved to the Seattle area permanently in 1997, I realized Roger Patterson was a subject that I could look into. He claimed to have taken a 60-second film clip of a Bigfoot, an actual Bigfoot. Again, a subject of the paranormal, which interests me. So I realized I was only about 2.5 hours away from Mill Creek, here near Seattle, to Yakima, and I began to travel over there and dig into who was Roger Patterson. Just ask the locals, who was he? And I was amazed at the information that became pouring out from these local ranchers and farmers and everyday people about this man, Roger Patterson. And the picture of Roger Patterson really was a very pleasant one as far as I was concerned. A lot of publicity come out about the film in 1967. It continued, and even today continues to be very popular as supposed evidence of Bigfoot. And no information was ever written that I could find in my research about Roger Patterson, the man, the photographer.
Oh, you mean the same individual that you referred to as a little man in your book repeatedly? Yes. If you read Greg Long's book, or if you decide to subject yourself to that book, I have, you will note that, yes, he calls Roger Patterson a little man several times. You know, and, I mean, Greg Long is the one who doesn't paint a very good picture of Roger Patterson. Roger Patterson, according to some who knew him, was what might be considered a Mr. Haney from Green Acres type. Kind of, you know, a small town, a small time con man, but nothing major, no major cons. He didn't pull any major cons on anybody. He was just he wasn't the type who was very good with paying people back, paying his bills and things like that. That's true. Those things are not untrue. But to paint him as this scum of the earth, and you know, equating him to, you know, Charles Manson or something like that, it's ridiculous. It's just it makes no sense at all, unless you're Greg Long, unless you're, you know, Philip Morris, Cal Korff. But it just makes no sense at all to paint him as this scum of the earth who is, you know, worthy of scorn.
And it's quite simple. When you're going to investigate anything, and it's an adage in journalism: who, what, when, where, why, and how are the key questions that a journalist always asks about a story. And so, when the Patterson subject came up, I decided I was going to ask those questions. Who was he? Where did he live? What did he do? Why did he do it? What motivated him? How did this whole film come about? And so I approached it as an investigator would approach a crime, if you will. We have a piece of evidence, supposedly a live Bigfoot, first time ever photographed. Is it a real piece of evidence? Could it be a hoax? What about the photographer? Was he an honest man? Had he integrity? Was he truthful? What was it?
Now see, this is where people like Greg Long and Cal Korff and Bob Kiviat made their mistake. They wanted to focus more on the photographer than they wanted to focus on the film itself. Now let's say Roger Patterson had gotten this film of a Sasquatch and then the next day went out and robbed a bank. Would that have made the film any less credible because he went out and robbed a bank? No. Does that make him a hoaxer if he goes and robs a bank? No, it makes him a bank robber, but it doesn't make him a hoaxer. It does not make him a hoaxer just because, you know, he gets filmed with a Sasquatch and then the next day he goes out and robs a bank. No, that dog won't hunt. I mean, for people to mischaracterize Roger Patterson like they have, to slander him and slime him like they do, no, I don't think any of us in the Bigfoot community should stand for that. And we won't stand for it.
His background, what was his belief system, and that sort of thing. So I I investigated in that respect using science and the tools of journalism. You put the film aside and you take a look at Roger and you ask the question, could this guy be a hoaxer? I guess one way to find out is ask his friends and neighbors and family members. The scientists that promoted this and supported this never did that.
They didn't need to. They didn't need to go to Yakima. They didn't need to look into Roger Patterson. They had the film. You know, Adolf Hitler could have taken that film. Rene Dahinden put it even more bluntly. A child molester could have taken that film. Would not make it any less credible. See, again, that's where Greg Long and Cal Korff and the rest of them made their mistake. They focused more on the filmmaker than they focused on the film itself. And let's not forget, this is not just a film of a Sasquatch. It's a film of a Sasquatch making footprints. There were footprints found in the ground even the next day after Lyle Laverty went there. There were footprints there. 9 days later, Bob Titmus cast 10 consecutive footprints. And they all had the mark of reality. They were not Ray Wallace fakies, and they were not faked by Roger Patterson.
For scientists to behave in that manner is to say they're not even scientists, because you need to go to the original source and those supporting sources for this purported evidence, and that was never done. It's amazing.
Didn't have to be done. They're not looking into Roger Patterson. They're not investigating Roger Patterson. They're investigating the film. You want to investigate Roger Patterson? Get a private investigator, not a scientist. Scientists don't do that. Scientists don't look into people's character. They look at evidence. They look at something that's tangible sitting in front of them. They're not private investigators. Jeff Meldrum's not a private investigator. Grover Krantz wasn't a private investigator. You're grasping at straws here, Greg.
That in some ways you need that the story is almost like it's a small community, almost family story in itself. Bob Hieronymus, who wore the Bigfoot suit, was a childhood friend.
Bullshit. And prove it. Prove he wore that suit, Greg. Prove it. You have not proven it. In 13 years, you haven't proven it. The suit has not turned up. The suit's not around. Hieronymus has changed his story 37 times. How can we expect a guy to be honest if he changes his story 37 times? He's full of more shit than a Christmas goose. Referring to Mr. Bob Hair on my ass.
Of Patty Patterson, Roger's widow, grew up with Patricia Patterson, knows her personally today. Bob Hieronymus knows.
And all of this is relevant how? All of this is relevant how? Okay, so Bob Hieronymus grew up with Patty Patterson and her family. Oh, wow. Okay, so that must mean that, he must have hoaxed the Bigfoot. He must have been in the suit. This is nothing more than a red herring, Greg. You've been using this red herring for 13 years. It has not worked. It will not work. We're on to your little bullshit scheme. Now you're saying, oh, well, he knows Bob Gimlin. Yeah, but they're not friends. They live down the street from each other, but they ain't friends.
Bob Gimlin, as you say, he's a neighbor. And they all lived and continue to live in a small western Washington town. What I was shocked hearing from one of the people I talked to was, well, we've always known it's a hoax, but no one ever came to Yakima and asked us about it. And that's...
Okay, all right. I've been to Yakima, Washington, Mr. Long, and I didn't run into anybody who said that film was a hoax. Now, did I go to the wrong places? I don't know. But, I wore Bigfoot t-shirts when I was in Yakima. And somebody could have come up to me and said, oh, that's a hoax. And that film is a hoax. But you know, the Walmart in Yakima sells Bigfoot items. They actually had a few Bigfoot items for sale there. I have a shot glass from Yakima. And it says that Yakima was Bigfoot country. Now, do you think that if they thought it was a hoax, that they would sell a shot glass like that in their Walmart? No. I never ran into anybody who said, oh, you know, that's a hoax. And old Bob Hieronymus, he was the guy in the suit. I never ran into anybody who was like that, who said that either.
The failure of the Roger Patterson Bigfoot myth, which is what it is that the media ran with it, scientists ran with it.
The media did not run with it. They think it's a hoax too. The media has constantly, although they've gotten better in recent years, there are times where they still kind of snicker and laugh at the thought of Bigfoot. And they think the Patterson-Gimlin film is a hoax. They bought into the Ray Wallace supposed dying confession, hook, line, and sinker. So, no, the media didn't run with it. They thought it was a hoax too.
With it, the television industry, of course, ran with it and promoted it. And for some bizarre reason, no one ever decided to dig into who Roger Patterson was and who he was surrounded with.
Well, Roger, Bob, and myself were involved in probably one of the greatest hoaxes that's ever been pulled off.
Bullshit! Bullshit! I call bullshit!
In history. Roger, he was a kind of a little bitty guy, you know, stout little feller. He was all right then. Him and Bob, you know, were looking over at Mount St. Helens, and we're in there for this Bigfoot thing, you know, and they'd go over there, and in fact, Roger wrote a book and a bunch of stuff, and then this Wallace thing come out down there at Bluff Creek, where he had the Caterpillar parked up there, and he made the prints, you know, and people would keep people from stealing the fuel and stuff, and so away they went, and they scouted the place out for a week or so, and they come back, and that's when I guess Roger ordered a suit from Philip Morris. Roger asked me if I would. He said, "I got this suit, this gorilla suit." He says, and nothing's illegal. He said, "Now, would you be willing to wear this suit? I'll give you $1,000. We're going to make a movie off this, and we're going to film this and send it to the movies people."
Now, why does he keep looking away? If he's telling the truth, would he not be looking directly at his interviewer? Why does he keep looking away? That's a sure sign right there he's full of shit. And he's lying his ass off.
In California, you're going to make a whole lot of money. I said, $1,000 in '67, that's a pretty good chunk of change for a 26-year-old guy like me, you know. So I said, yeah, as long as it ain't illegal, I'll do it. So I went up there and tried the suit on. Of course, Roger had modified it, put the boobs on, the padding, and the waders, you know, and for the muscle mass and that stuff. And I tried the suit on, and he showed me how he wanted.
You notice he looks down. That's the hallmark of somebody who's not telling the truth. Why is he looking down? That sends up a big red flag right there. Why is he looking down?
Me to walk, and of course everybody say I walk that way anyway. But
okay, you notice how he's walking. He's cupping his hand behind him. I pointed out in a previous video that there were some of the lesser quality frames. Frame 254 of the Patterson-Gimlin film have an anomaly right in this area, which makes it appear as if Patty is making the OK sign. That was nothing more than an anomaly in the photographic process. Her knuckles end right about in there. So you notice he's cupping his hands. And oh, by the way, he's not bending his knees. Look right there. Look how straight that leg is. See how straight that leg is? Let's see. Does he lift?
I went up and down the pasture there.
He doesn't even lift his feet when he's walking. He does not lift his feet perpendicular with the ground. He walks just like all the rest of us do. We all walk the same way that Bob Hieronymus is walking. Patty walked like she was cross-country skiing. So that's another one right there. Busted.
A few times at his place up there on the South Fork, and he said, "That's it. That's just exactly the way I want you to do it." They left like on a Sunday. They come and picked up one of my horses, the one Bob was riding, the big horse, and they took off, and they told me to meet him down there on Wednesday afternoon or evening at 5 o'clock at a little town called, I think it was Wetchupec, the gas station.
Right.
Well, I met him there, and I pulled in there.
Okay, Wednesday. On what day? What day did they ask you to meet them, Bob? What day? Do you remember what day? Surely you would remember something like that. I mean, you were part of one of the biggest hoaxes around, right? I mean, surely you would remember the dates and the day you were there. Surely you'd remember that. Unless you weren't there at all.
One of them, Roger or Bob, one, come running out there and says, "Going up the road, there's a pull-off out here. We don't want people seeing us associated together, all three of us here." So I drove on up the road and waited for them, and they finally filled their truck up and come up there. We went up the road there, about 5 miles up on Bluff Creek up there, and they had a camp set up.
Okay, it's not 5 miles. He says it's 5 miles. No. It's much longer. From what I understand, and I have not been on these roads, but from what I understand, it takes a long time to get over those roads. And that depends on what condition the roads are in, too. Depends on if there's obstacles in the way of the road, or if there's snowfall, or something like that. It's not no 5 miles. It takes a long time to get from town to a campsite. So again, you're busted again there, Bob.
There, and it was getting dark by then, and I drove. It takes about 12, 14 hours to drive down there from here. Mm-hmm. I was tired, and I crawled up in the back of the doghouse on the truck where they keep the saddles and the hay and stuff for horses, and had a sleep bag and rolled out and went to sleep.
Okay, now, you see, Bob would only know about something like that up in the top part of that truck if he'd actually seen it at Bob Gimlin's house. I mean, he could have easily seen that and said, "Oh yeah, that's where I slept. That's where I got up and let's see. In my very obviously bullshit story, I'm going to say that I slept up in there, but even though I was never there, but I slept up in there. Yeah, bullshit."
And the next morning we got up, had coffee and bullshit, and
yeah, you're bullshit.
Got
right now,
saddled the
Bob.
horses up, and had the suit was in a sack.
And why do you
Big
keep looking
gunny
down
sack,
if you're telling
and
the truth?
threw that over one of the back of the horses, and I jumped on the back of Bob with my old horse, and we went up. It was about a half a mile from the camp, and unloaded the suit, and they helped me get in the suit. Naturally, had to help me get in. It was kind of bulky, you know. And Roger said, "Now you go over here and stand this certain place." I walked over there, and he said, "When I say go, you start moving."
Yeah, and Bob, guess what? Yeah, how would you hear him say go? With running water of a creek, you wearing a mask, wearing one of those masks, if indeed you did wear a mask, you're not going to be able to hear somebody say go or cut or whatever. Especially with rushing water, rushing creek water. You think it's bad? Just think about, just compare it to the way, actors who play Batman, they have to put on a cowl. It has to be very tight up against their ears. It's going to reduce their hearing capabilities. And I mean, that's bad enough, but then you've got rushing water right there by you. And Bob ostensibly had rushing water by him, I should say. So he's going to hear Roger say go. He's going to hear Roger say, cut, when he's way down there, and Roger's way up here? No, I don't think so.
You know, you're doing your walk. So I yelled and I started moving, and so he's sitting on the horse going like this with the camera.
And wrong! Wrong! He was not sitting on a horse. There would have been evidence if he'd been sitting on a horse. You would have seen the horse in frame, dumb shit. But you don't see it. So you're full of shit again.
So supposedly the horse was bucking, you know, which is not true.
The horse was bucking before he got the camera out of the saddlebag, dumb shit. Lying piece of shit.
Anyway, he filmed it, and as soon as they got done, we rode back to camp. Roger had an envelope already made out, stamped and everything, and he put the film out of the camera, put it in there, and he said, now take this to Eureka, to the post office, which is, I guess, the only post office around that area at that time that you could mail stuff out.
He had you do this?
Me. I took it in the car, I put it in the car, put the suit in the trunk of the car, because when they were going to go to town and announce they'd filmed this Bigfoot, they didn't want a suit laid up in the truck. They only had just the truck. Somebody would look up in there or something and see that suit and say, well, you're phony, you know. Anyway, I put the suit in the car, and I took the film to Eureka, California, and mailed it to Yakima.
Only one problem. By the time you got there, the post office would have been closed. Because it would take quite a while to get out of those woods and then try and get to the post office, get to Eureka, which is at least probably 3 hours away. No. Bullshit.
I jumped in the car and I stayed overnight there. And the next morning I got up and come home. The next day they come back with the truck after they had gone to Willow Creek or wherever they went to announce the filming of the Bigfoot, you know. And they spread the word around and hoopla.
Now wait a minute, he just said the next day they went to Willow Creek to announce it. But yet it was supposedly, I thought according to Bob Hieronymus and Greg Long's timeline, that the film was shot earlier than that. How could it have been the next day? That's a mystery. Could it be that Bob Hieronymus is once again full of more shit than a Christmas goose? Yeah, could be.
Anyway, they come on home and they dropped my horse off at the house down the road here and took the suit. In them days you didn't lock your car or anything. They took the suit out of the trunk of the car.
Now the part about the horse is probably about the only piece of this story that could be true, that has any truth to it whatsoever. Other than that, the rest of it is bullshit from Hieronymus.
And that's the last I saw of the suit. Well, he had put the boobs on it, you know, for a female.
Okay.
And he had shaved part of it, you know, with a razor, kind of make it look like the, you know, been through the brush and the hair slid off and that kind of stuff. And he redone the face on the suit that Philip sent him. He redone that with a.
Oh, and one other thing. Bob does not even mention in this that he went to the Idle Hour Tavern and showed off the suit. He doesn't even, they skim over that in this. If Roger and Bob were supposed to have got the suit out of the trunk of your car, or your mother's car, or whatever, then, and that was the last you saw of the suit, then how long did you have the suit, supposedly? How long did you have this suit, this alleged suit? Did you not have it long enough to go show to your buddies at the Idle Hour Tavern? But, I mean, I guess they didn't give him a chance to mention that on here. Maybe it didn't fit in with their narrative.
Some kind of a leather thing across there.
Okay.
That's
what about, how do you tell about the muscular parts of the legs?
Those were wading boots. If you ever look at the wading boots, they kind of come up and come out, you know, around the...
Wrong! Wrong! First of all, it was probably not musculature. There may have been a little bit of musculature. Excuse me. But mostly it was adipose tissue, fatty tissue that she was storing up for winter. And I've seen photographs that compare your little waders, your little hip waders, to what's in the Patterson-Gimlin film. And the difference is night and day. So again, Bob, you're full of more shit than a Christmas goose.
Calves and stuff. That's what those were.
And how do you call for the butt?
Well, he'd put padding. He'd sewed pockets in there, and he'd push like pillows or padding down in there.
Okay. All right.
Both sides.
Okay.
The shoulders were an old leather. I mean, the old leather football pads used to be leather, you know. The shoulders were an old football.
To make it look broad across
right,
the top.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Before we left down there, Roger said when I turned to look at him, he told me when to turn, you know. And I said, well, I have a prosthesis eye, and I said I had an extra one. I said, why don't you mold that in that mask part there on the eye socket and put it at an angle. When I turn my head, I'm looking right at you with that eye. Perfect. He said, good idea. And that's what he done it. If you notice, the eye shines. This eye on the left side is sunk back in behind the mask like that. I mean, you know, just all you got to do is take a close-up of the face. You'll see that.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Now, a lot of people didn't know this for a lot of years.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, well, there's scientists, or so-called scientists, will tell you there's not a human being that can walk that way.
Right.
Well, everybody in the world around here has known me and said he walks that way anyway. You know, whether I faked it, you know, the grill thing, you know, but it's an almost natural walk.
Nobody has a natural walk like that, Bob. Nobody. No single human being has a walk like that. I got news for you. I don't walk like that. And I can watch people walking. They don't walk like that. They don't, I'm just going to say it. They don't walk like they got a corn cob stuck up their ass. Alright? And they don't try and imitate a gorilla or a Bigfoot or whatever either. Unless they're doing it as a prank or a joke. I mean, Bob, his patty walk, I believe, is from years of seeing the film and then trying to practice the walk. Of course, he doesn't do it very well. Still doesn't do it nearly as well as the way Patty looked. So, guess what, Bob? Guess what, honker? Wrong!
And some of those scientists said you can see the mouth moving. The mouth never moved a fraction, you know, nothing. I kept it quiet. I promised Roger I wouldn't tell anybody. I kept it quiet for 35 years.
But yet you went to the Idle Hour Tavern and showed the suit off to your buddies. But yet you kept it quiet. But yet it managed to get out anyway, didn't it? Again, that's another contradiction, and you're full of more shit than a Christmas goose.
I saw the world's greatest hoaxes, which Bob Kiviat produced on television. And I said, this time people knew the truth. Everybody around this part of the country knew it, and it was me anyway. A week after they saw the film, or the film came out. Well, that's Bob Hieronymus, that's Bob. Well, I've been called a liar, you know, a lot of times. But
because you are one. And by the way, how do they know it was you there, Bob? Unless you showed them the suit. How do they know? Unless you showed them the suit. But you kept it quiet for 35 years, right? Bullshit!
But you can go from 2 miles down the road here to 30 miles that way and ask anybody over 50 years old who Bigfoot was, and they can tell you. Before they picked took the suit out of the car.
Okay, well then, you're going to see this on here. Why did they only get one witness? One individual. One of your buddies to sit with you and corroborate your story. If everybody around there over 50 years old knew it was you. Because you're full of shit.
Car. My mother, I used her car. I had a little hot rod car.
Now this is Opal.
Yeah. I used my mother's brand new car and went down there. Anyway, before they come and drop the horse off. I was asleep or something. My nephew and my mom were going to go.
Oh, and by the way, there was an individual going around Yakima hoaxing in a Bigfoot suit. Now, Jerry Lee Merritt said he saw a gray individual, a gray supposed Bigfoot, at his house, and its dog grabbed it by the family jewels. It ran off yelping and hollering. Maybe that's why Bob walks that way now. Oh, because it could have been Bob, or it could have been one of his buddies playing a prank around Yakima. Now, well, you'll see later on that Bob Hieronymus' mother claims there was a suit in the back, in the trunk, and that the aunt tried the headpiece on, the nephew tried the headpiece on. You know, Bob might have had, he could have had that suit, he could have had his gray horsehide suit dyed to make it look like it might have been used in the Patterson-Gimlin film. Or he could have bought another gorilla suit.
To town with groceries or something. Anyway, she opened up the trunk lid to do something, and there was this suit laying in there. Well, it was a gorilla face. Boy, she jumped back, you know.
Now he says gorilla face. Gorilla face. Not the modified face that Roger Patterson allegedly made, right? He just said gorilla face. So once again, busted! Once again, busted! Now, again, you know, there was supposedly a individual around Yakima hoaxing Bigfoot. There was an individual around Yakima hoaxing Bigfoot, because he tried to hoax Jerry Lee Merritt.
Of course, after a little bit, they got closer and saw it wasn't alive. And my nephew tried the head of it on. He ran around the house down here trying to scare everybody. And my aunt used to live right here across the road from us. She was down there and she tried it on. But you know, there was 8 or 9 people that saw the suit. And then you see it on television. Well, that's the same thing that was laying in the trunk of the car.
Bullshit. Who says that except you there, Bobby? Hmm?
You know, what about, you know, stuff on the feet? What about the shaved hair? What about, you know, the different? He said, don't worry about none of that. Roger said, you're going to be far enough away, nobody could tell the difference anyway. They say the thing is supposed to be 7-8 foot tall. Well, I was a little over 6 foot tall. They said, well, how is somebody going to tell if you're 7 foot tall when you're clear over there, or if you're 4 foot tall? I said, you can tell, see that little tree right there? As far away as that is, a guy can say that's that big around, when it's only this big around, you know. They said they can see the mouth moving. That's Here's Bun. He saw the suit.
His name Bun?
Bernard. We call him Bun.
Okay.
We were in the water hole having beers. Yeah. Hawker wanted us to come out and look at this, and so that's exactly what we did. We went out there and he woke.
All right. I take that back. Yeah, okay, right here. This one buddy of Bob Hieronymus says he saw the suit. One guy. Now, where's all these other people, all these other individuals who are backing up Bob Hieronymus? You know, where's all the rest of them? Only one guy shows up to back up Hieronymus.
The trunk up, and sure enough, there it were. And didn't know if it was a stolen fur coat but it was the suit.
Bob was asleep. He got in that night, early or morning or sometime. Anyway, I was going to go get some fruit, and I was.
Now I will say this: I'm not going to call his mother a liar. I'm not going to go after the man's mother. Okay? I'm not going to do that. She may have seen a suit. I will not deny that she may have seen a suit, but it was not the realistic Sasquatch we see on the Patterson-Gimlin film. It is not a suit that matched that, despite what Hieronymus says. But Opal, I mean, I think she is genuinely sincere in that she may have thought that yes, her son was involved with that film. I'm not going to attack Opal Hieronymus.
raised up the trunk to put my boxes in there, and here was the black suit laying in there.
Oh, wow. Now, was it black, though?
Well, brownish, whatever.
Brownish, okay.
Yeah.
All right, okay, all right. And that's how you came upon it?
Yes.
Okay, now when he woke up, what'd you tell him?
I don't know all I did say now. That's been too long ago.
Okay.
But anyway, he wouldn't own up to nothing.
Really?
No.
Well, then he kept his word upon, as a gentleman, to these other fellas, not to say anything.
He did.
Well, I met Bob.
Except that he told it to the individuals in the tavern and showed them the suit. But again, I'm not going to go after his mother. His mother is an innocent party in this. She has nothing to do with this. I'm not going to go after her.
Hieronymus, and this might sound really old-fashioned to people who don't remember this time, because it may not exist anymore, but it used to be that people could make what's called a gentleman's agreement with a handshake. It was as strong as a contract that could be enforced by a court. And Bob Hieronymus told me I made an agreement to Roger Patterson that I wouldn't tell anybody.
But he did, Greg, or he allegedly did. He went around and told people that he allegedly, was down there in Northern California. Now, he may have had a suit. He may have shown his buddies a suit. I'm not going to dispute that. I'm not going to say that I'm not going to say that they're all liars. He may have shown them a suit. But it's ridiculous to think that, yes, that was the suit that was used in the PG film. Because it wasn't a suit in the PG film. Now, maybe I was a little bit hard on his buddy, perhaps. Bob Hieronymus' buddy. I could be wrong. I'm not wrong about Hieronymus. I mean, his buddy's backing him up, but his buddy may be only remembering, oh yeah, I saw a suit. I mean, his buddy earnestly and honestly believes that Hieronymus was the guy was in that suit in that film. And I'm not going to attack his buddy. We'll just put it that way.
I'll wear the suit, pay me $1,000. That's all that I want, but I won't tell anyone about it. He would tell some friends and neighbors about his experience quietly in Yakima, never seeking the limelight. And it's only when I began looking into the Patterson story, and he found out that I was there in the Yakima Valley looking into it, that he finally said, you know something, I think it's time that I just tell this. So he simply told the truth. And the reaction is, you're a liar, Bob.
Because he is.
You're a liar. Bob Hieronymus took 2 polygraph tests. 2. He took one by Yakima sheriff.
And where are the results of that test? And why won't they be? And why haven't they been released to the general public?
County sheriff, Yakima County sheriff, and he took another one on a show called Lie Detector. It was a show that lasted perhaps 1 season, but he was given a lie detector exam by an FBI examiner.
Ed Gelb, I've already done a video about Ed Gelb and how he was discredited. He's not truly a polygraph examiner. He got it under not under false pretenses, but he got a fraudulent degree in polygraph testing.
And he passed that test as well.
And you can pass a polygraph. It's not that hard. There's ways online you can look for to pass a polygraph. I'm not impressed with somebody who passes a polygraph. A guilty person can fail. A guilty person can pass one. An innocent person can fail one.
Yeah, what I found in my investigation was the bottom of all of this was money. And in fact, Roger Patterson stated after he took this film, quote, "I'm gonna make $1 million." He said that. That's on record.
Yeah, he said he could make $1 million. Yeah, and Oh, scandalous. He says he's going to make $1 million off it. Scandalous. Oh. That's just specious reasoning. It's a specious argument.
After he took this film, scientists did look at it. It is a fairly convincing film for those who are untutored in the subject of Bigfoot. It looks like a very large, very muscular, ape-like man. Walking somewhat like a man, swinging his arms like an ape, if you will. And so it was rather intriguing when it came out. But once you dig into who Roger Patterson was and who his connections were at the time as well, because he wasn't the only one who was looking for Bigfoot when this film was shot. There were a number of other people, big-named Bigfoot personalities, if you will, who were also looking for evidence for Bigfoot. When you start to look into his connections, who he met, where he went, what he was doing, you realize that this wasn't something that just happened by accident, but there was planning involved in it. There was preparation involved in it. It's shocking to think that scientists at that time, and there apparently are some even today, who then and even now continue to believe that this is an unknown primate. To think that this was actually looked at and evaluated by members of the Smithsonian Institute, which is one of our revered institutions in Washington, is shocking. This was presented to Life magazine for consideration to do a story on it. It was taken to a number of other scientists who evaluated in terms of its ape-like characteristics. These are anthropologists. These are experts. The Russians were involved for a period of time in looking at this film. Yeah, you have to wonder, why would people be so terribly intrigued in a film like this when their focus is solely upon 60 seconds of film strip and not upon the photographer himself?
Because the photographer doesn't matter. I said that earlier and I'll say it again. The photographer does not matter. The film is what matters.
I was sitting in my living room. It was in the latter part of October, and on my television set came the.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm putting out this plea. If there's anybody out there who is of the age, let's say you were maybe 10 years old in 1967 in October, or maybe a little bit older. Can you tell me if you ever saw the Patterson-Gimlin film in motion on television in October of 1967, late October? Because Philip Morris claims that he saw the film on television in 1967. From what I have heard from some people, is that it was actually not shown on television in motion until about January or February of 1968. So I think Philip Morris is also full of more shit than a Christmas goose.
Picture of this Bigfoot walking through the forest, and the announcer said 2 cowboys were out in the national forest and just happened to have their camera with them and got this picture of Bigfoot. And I'm looking at him, holy cows, that's my gorilla suit. I had heard that.
Now he claims that he recognized that as his gorilla suit, which is impossible. Back then, at that time, the image on that film, it was shown on television, would not have been any bigger than the sprocket holes of the film itself. So it would have been a little bitty thing, even if it had been shown on television. At the time he claims he saw it, it would have been a little bitty thing. How could he have recognized? And look, you think about televisions from 1967, from that era. Do you really think? I mean, they didn't have HD back then. They did not have the luxury of, recording this stuff off television. There were no VCRs at that time. So therefore, the only way you could have seen the Patterson-Gimlin film in any kind of capacity was to maybe film your television. and watch it on film. Now, you could, you could run the film, wind the film back, run it forward and all that. But you would risk scratching up the film and damaging it pretty badly. So for Philip Morris to say that he recognized his gorilla suit on a little bitty figure walking across the television screen, I mean, those televisions at that time were, admittedly, they were not of the best quality as far as television, as far as the picture was concerned. You had to use rabbit ears. There wasn't even cable television back then. You had to use rabbit ears. If you were lucky, you got 3 channels. So, he's lying when he said he recognized his gorilla suit.
He had rented a suit to use and had worked with the suit and decided that's not what he wanted to do. First of all, he wanted to make changes in it. He did not want it to look like a gorilla.
Right.
He asked me when he was on the phone and he was buying the suit, he said, does it look like a real gorilla? And I said, no, it looks more like a Hollywood gorilla. He wanted also to be able to buy the suit so that he could make whatever changes he needed to make in it. For instance, he wanted to change it from a male to a female.
Right.
Okay, I'm not gonna play the whole thing with Philip Morris because he has. I won't say he's contradicted himself, but I will say that I don't believe a word Philip Morris says. And we're getting almost an hour into my analysis and my response here, so I'm going to kind of try and hurry this up a little bit. Okay, now Morris claims this is the slipper foot that Hieronymus would have worn. All right, let me just play it for you.
Just from me.
Yeah.
In 1957, 67. Now, let me tell you a few things about this.
Yeah.
Now, this foot went over the top of whatever, and Patterson had several days to cut this and make it fit over the top of the wading boot. And as you step forward, you could move. It looks like the toes are moving, but the toes are not moving. They're just turning up
Off the pad.
Off of the pad.
Right.
See, it was very simple.
Yeah.
Now I want to show you about the hands. And you've heard these Bigfoot experts say, well, it's impossible that it was not a real Bigfoot because the hands come way down to about the knee.
Right.
And there's no human who has hands like that, and the length of the arms. And if you add padding to it, then the arm's not going to bend in the very middle. When I spoke to Patterson on the telephone, when he called back, he said, we'd like to build the shoulders up. So, well, this is the easiest way to do it. Now, these are shoulder pads from that period. Today's football shoulder pads are a little different than this, but this is what they were using in the 60s. And I said, go over to the high school and talk to the coach.
Okay, now, note. You see, that's a hard plastic. See, it's a hard plastic football pad. Didn't Hieronymus say that they used leather football pads? Now that may have been true. Let's say they may have used leather football pads back in the 20s and 30s. But look at this. Okay, so Hieronymus has been caught in another contradiction. Number one. Number two, and this is just a side note. Notice how much this guy looks a lot like Mel Torme. Yes, the Velvet Fog. He could pass as Mel Torme's twin. He could.
I said he'll have a pair of shoulder pads. He'll probably have a pair that's broken on it in somewhere, and he'll probably give them to you. Now, once you put on these shoulder pads, would you step over here, our model here, please, and put on this pair of shoulder pads. Now, you see what you're doing. You see how much you're raising the shoulder here? You're adding length with the gorilla hand. But you do not put the gorilla hand all the way on. What you're doing, let me see if I get you the one for this side so it's easier to shoot. Yeah, there we are. What you do is he puts the hand just inside right here. Now it goes down to a side, and you see where it's coming. Below the knee is where the hand is.
Yeah.
Where does the arm bend? Still in the center. Still in the very center.
Oh, but now wait a minute. I thought Bob Hieronymus used extensions, arm extensions. Yeah, I mean, Philip Morris is showing how to bend the elbow. And that's true, but see, he's leaving out that Hieronymus claimed that he used arm extensions to make the arms longer and make the hands extend down below the knees. So that's something that Philip Morris is leaving out.
People need to realize that it's not just Roger Patterson in this Bigfoot film that forms the core of the Bigfoot movement. Because at the time that Roger Patterson was looking...
Well, you know, that's one thing I'll agree with Greg Long on. For once, Greg Long, you and I are in total agreement. The Patterson-Gimlin film does not form the entire basis for the Bigfoot phenomenon. I mean, there's the footprint casts, there's the strange hairs, the fecal matter, the vocalizations, the sightings. You know, and I have long said it, and I will continue to say it, even if that film is shown to be a hoax, even if what's in the film turns out to be a guy in his costume, a gorilla costume, not Bob Hieronymus, by the way. He's already contradicted himself too many times. That would not invalidate my encounter, my sighting. It would not invalidate anybody else's sightings either. It would not invalidate all the other evidence. That's not to say that, yes, I think the Patterson-Gimlin film shows a guy in a suit. I do not think that at all. But even if it did, that would not invalidate people's experiences, and it would not invalidate the other evidence.
For Bigfoot, there were other key players in the whole search for Bigfoot. These include John Green, a famous Canadian Bigfooter, Rene Dahinden, who is also a Canadian, Grover Krantz, a Washington State University professor, and a number of other people who are looking for Bigfoot on their own and then communicating with each other as team members and partners. They're all looking for Bigfoot. This activity was all going on, and suddenly out of the blue comes Roger Patterson. He's unemployed, used to ride in rodeos for a period of time, would take on a job which he would keep for maybe a week or two and quit because he never wanted to work for anybody. Suddenly this Roger Patterson, kind of an upstart Bigfoot hunter, enters this scene, and he starts looking for Bigfoot, and he started looking for Bigfoot at about 1964. 3 years later...
Actually, that was a misprint. It was actually 63. And he was actually looking for Bigfoot even before that. It wasn't just 63. Read his book, Greg. He was looking for Bigfoot long before 1963. Now, he went to California for the first time in 1963. But no, he was looking into it long before that, after reading the article by Ivan T. Sanderson in True Magazine, which was published in December of 1959.
Suddenly, he manages to take a film of Bigfoot. You know, how did that happen? The Bigfoot researchers who had been looking for Bigfoot and trying to film it had never had sufficient evidence. And yet suddenly this young ex-rodeo writer from Yakima becomes a star overnight. Immediately, the other Bigfoot hunters support him. And the Bigfoot field takes off.
Doing my research into this film, it became clear to me that John Green, Rene Dahinden, Bob Titmus, and a guy from the U.S. Forest Service named Sylvester McCoy were all probably duped by both Patterson and Wallace. Having found that Green had corresponded with Titmus concerning the possibility of bringing a tracking dog into the Bluff Creek area on more than one occasion, I also obtained evidence from researcher Leroy Blevins in the form of a copy of a letter from Green to Titmus, which confirmed the dates they were there. Pilot Keith Chiazari, who has been mistaken for Bob Titmus on many occasions, flew Green, DeHinden, Dale Moffat, and Moffat's dog, White Lady, to the site on the 28th of August, 1967, and flew them back to Canada on the 31st. During that time, Chizari was seen many times on film walking the roads, looking at the tracks while holding Renee DeHinden's shotgun. DeHinden shot the footage that has become known as the tracking dog film. The sad thing about this is that the tracks they're reviewing were almost certainly hoaxed by either Wallace or even Patterson. So Green and DeHinden became believers in the tracks and were also taken in by Patterson's film. Enter American National Enterprises, a film company, and its owner, Ron Olson. Olson was making a movie in the area at the time, and Roger Patterson was on Olson's payroll during the time when the Patterson-Gimlin film was made. And here's a picture of his cast. Do you recognize that guy up there with the long black hair? It's none other than Bob Gimlin. Do you smell a rat yet?
No, I do not smell a rat. Maybe you do.
The Bigfoot movement has been sustained by this piece of film for 45 years. And
no, it has not been sustained by this film for 45 years. It's been sustained by sightings. It's been sustained by other bits of evidence. It's been sustained by other impressions besides foot impressions, such as the Skookum cast, which I'm starting to think more and more each day does represent an unknown primate, with deference to those who think it's an elk wallow. I mean, the PG film is just one part of the evidence.
It's amazing to me that the Bigfoot community, as it calls itself, never stopped to go back and ask the right questions. Vilma Radford actually signed a contract and loaned Roger Patterson $700 with interest for him to specifically, as he told her, to go to California and make a movie about Bigfoot.
Okay, I think this next part is about Vilma Radford, and I just really don't want to go into that because it's more hearsay. I mean, she may have been a nice lady and everything, but you know, it's just more hearsay is all it is.
Secondly, we have the contract.
Okay, this is the interview with Vilma Radford. I'm going to skip ahead to some of the other stuff.
Away from you.
Okay, that's Vilma, again, more Vilma Radford. I'm going to skip ahead.
Oh, $100.
All right. $100.
At that time.
Here's the trouble I have with the film.
He was going to have a film.
Right.
Now, she learned eventually.
He tried to buy up claims from anywhere he could.
Upon Patterson's profits, their share, so to speak, and he eventually bought from you your share.
He bought the share with $100.
Oh, $100.
All right. $100, and with the promise that the minute he made any money on the Bigfoot, he would reimburse me.
Did he ever reimburse you?
No.
Never did.
No.
It's kind of like Patterson, isn't he? Or wasn't he? Renee DeHinden.
Renee DeHinden became obsessed with ownership of Patterson's film. He tried to buy up claims from anywhere he could. He was able to convince Gimlin to sell his share, and even succeeded in badgering Patricia Patterson into selling him rights to the stills.
Well, I look at it this way. Money does strange.
Okay, I think there's a little bit more of this with Vilma Radford. I mean, yes, there was a contract, but it's just more here.
Waited, and she waited to be repaid. He was going to have a film.
Right.
Now, she learned eventually he did have a film, this famous 60-second film. Yet no money was paid back to her. But we know from talking to other principals in this scheme that the film was soon thereafter, after October, hitting the roads and being promoted and shown in theaters all across the United States. That film purportedly made as much as $200,000. We have to question whether the film was even shot on October the 20th. That's the importance of knowing about Kodachrome film at that time.
Here's the trouble I have with the film. It's been stated that the Patterson film was shot on Kodachrome 25. Kodachrome is a beautiful film. Red and green, saturated, beautiful stuff. proprietary process for Kodak. You don't rush Kodachrome out to a lab and get it processed and back in 48 hours. It does not happen. The timeline fits perfectly if it was rushed out and treated with a standard cinematographer's film. But the timeline of the whole film itself, saying that they shot it October 20th, I think is bogus. We have testimony both written and spoken, filmed by myself, that all of these principles were there much earlier than that. And in fact, some of that red foliage you see in the background was foliage that had a natural red color during the summer. In October, in that section of the country, any hardwoods, any deciduous trees, that place would be littered with leaves. There's not a single leaf on the ground out there. Not all those trees were pine trees. So there are many questions. We know very little of the film itself, but an awful lot has been assumed over the years.
The film supposedly was, the story goes, mailed to Yakima through the U.S. Postal Service.
No, it was not. No, it was never mailed. It was flown to Seattle. Al Diatley probably had a lab that he knew about on the side that could develop films like that in that short of a period of time. You know, now we're gonna hear from Leroy Blevins here in a little bit on this, and well, anybody who is familiar with Leroy Blevins knows that well, he claims, yes, that the film is a hoax, and he's claimed things about the film, including, and I've shown in other videos, where he said he saw Bob Hieronymus in the bushes. They strangely do not cover that here, interestingly enough. They don't cover that he was in the bushes, as it were, on this documentary, which I found interesting.
To Al Diatley, another player in this entire story, he has no memory as to receiving the film. He hasn't denied that he had it processed, that he himself had it processed, but he has no memory whatsoever of where he would have sent it. And I find that pretty amazing, because he is the man who 2 days after the film was shot, supposedly on October 20th, on October 22nd, he was showing it on a projector in the basement of his home in Yakima with Roger Patterson in attendance, and along with John Green and Renee DeHenden and some other famous Bigfoot people.
Leroy Blevins is an independent researcher and also a believer that the Patterson-Gimlin film was a hoax. I did an interview with Leroy in his home near Lexington, Kentucky this past winter, along with Rob Price and TJ Biscardi from the Searching for Bigfoot team.
Being this the holy grail for Bigfooters, okay? You going in the direction that you're going in is going to pretty much tear them apart. Have you had a lot of people try to discredit you doing this online, or in person, or?
Yes, okay. I get a lot of bad emails from people. Okay. I got a lot of bloggers out there saying a bunch of bad stuff, saying I'm a loony, I'm a nut, I'm crazy, I'm imagining things. But everything that I find is not like I just look at it. I have other people look at it as well and give me their input on what they see. If you watch the film, and if you even look at the stills, you'll see there's actually a scene that runs from the buttocks all the way up through the hip and around to the front. When the creature walks, you can see part where the leg muscle is, where they claim it was a herniated muscle. You can see it all just presses up together, like your pants be folded together. When the arm comes back, you'll see this whole section up here folds together and gives you a smaller outline of an arm. Okay, you can even see the outlines of the shoulder pads that they have underneath there. When the creature walks, there's no separation in the buttocks. Buttocks sways from left to right, left to right, left to right when it feet motions. But when the right leg comes down, the left buttock should go up. It should have a different separation, and there's really no separation, even though they claim there's separation in it. But when you actually watch the film, you'll see it just moves left to right, left to right, left to right. That's it. There's no separation.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, do we really know what a Sasquatch butt looks like? Do we know how a Sasquatch butt works? That's my question. Nobody has a live Sasquatch. The closest thing we have is the Patterson-Gimlin film. So how do we know how a Sasquatch butt works?
Whatsoever. Now, the place that I found that claimed that, yeah, they can develop the film, and they have developed the film for Roger Patterson and them, because what they do is they develop film 7 days a week for news reporters, a newscast. So a reporter comes in, drops the film, says, I need it by this time, and they'll have it done for them that same day.
You found the people that said they developed the film?
Mm-hmm.
How'd you find them?
I made phone calls first. Mm-hmm. And then after I found the company, I went ahead and emailed them. And when I got the email back, they said, yes, they were the ones that did it. They told me they develop film for news stations and reporters all the time, and they're open 7 days a week. So by the timelines, they talked about filming it on Friday, then reporting the story at Friday night, then having airmail Friday afternoon or evening hours to Seattle, Washington, for Al Diatley to get there on Saturday morning to pick up the film at the airport, then go get it developed at the place, and viewing it on Sunday. Then they went to British Columbia at the British Columbia University and showed it the second time on a Monday night.
No. It went to British Columbia on Thursday. They went up there on Thursday night, October 26th. It wasn't the following Monday, it was the following Thursday night.
It's interesting, the role of John Green and Renee DeHinden specifically in all of this, because within 2 days of the film being shot, if it were shot on October 20th, and we don't believe that anymore, they end up in Yakima, Washington. They're in the basement of Diatley's home, who financed Roger's expeditions, as he called them. They're there looking at this film. And you're going, well, did Roger know John Green? And you go, well, yeah, he did. Roger Patterson visited John Green in 1964 in order to, in order to borrow news stories and information from John Green to put into his book that Patterson ultimately wrote called Do Abominable Snowmen of America Really Exist? So Green knew who he was. And Patterson made the contact to get something out of Green. Now, Renee DeHinden knew John Green. They lived close by in Canada, and they both were interested in reports of Bigfoot in the Bluff Creek area, where the film was shot, and often travel there together or separately looking into the subject. In that area, suddenly Roger Patterson shows up. He found in 1964, now I don't know if it was before he met John Green or after, but Roger Patterson said he found a Bigfoot print in Bluff Creek and he made a cast of it.
It was actually 1963, and what happened was he was told by Pat Graves, who was a timber cruiser, about the there was two footprints that he casted actually. I have a copy of one of the footprint casts that was casted at Larry Miller Road, and that was in October 1963. But what Greg Long is about to assert is the ultimate in assholishness.
So here is Roger Patterson in communication with John Green and Renee DeHinden. Within months of this film being shot, suddenly John Green wants to get a copy of it. Renee DeHinden wants to get a copy of it, and they paid money to have it. I think they were motivated to make money out of it.
Oh, that is such bullshit. That is such bullshit, and screw you for saying that. Screw you, Greg Long. Asshole.
And to promote their own projects, Bigfoot projects. You know, John Green was a well-known Bigfoot writer at that time, and soon thereafter, and sold a lot of books, and made a lot of money, my understanding is.
Well, he was independently wealthy, separate from his Bigfoot books. Anybody who knows John Green and knows anything about his family history knows that he was independently wealthy outside the books that he wrote. Because his father, I believe, was a member of Canadian Parliament, if I'm not mistaken. So just to say that they were motivated by money, I mean, no. That's just... Screw you for saying that, Greg Long. Screw you. I'm trying to keep this as PG-13 as I can.
Rene Dahinden saw that there was money in that film, and he wanted to use it to promote himself as well in his efforts. In fact, he took it all the way to Russia to have it analyzed.
No, I just refuse to listen to this crap. Let's see what else.
The money out the alley. He told me that he took off
saying that Roger Patterson was motivated by money.
People tend to not even care to write about her. Why don't they know about her role in this?
Now he's trying to say that Patricia Patterson was motivated by money.
Let's say that she charges $5,000 to $10,000 to $15,000.
Very hard to keep this PG-13, folks.
Guy, okay. He took advantage of people. He stole from them.
And screw you. No, he didn't. Screw you. He's talking about Roger Patterson supposedly taking advantage of people and using them and dumping them and all this. All that is not true. Nobody who knew Roger Patterson believes all that. So screw you.
He used them. He dumped them. He went on. But when you bring up that subject to the...
And screw you and screw you.
The founding fathers of Bigfoot. Oh, that's all irrelevant. The honesty and
it is irrelevant.
Integrity of the photographer of Bigfoot has absolutely nothing to do with this film.
That's right.
These people, the founding fathers, if you will, of Bigfoot, and this also includes a Gimlin and a Patty Patterson, protect the film as much as they do because it provides them income, it provides them publicity, it provides them a certain degree of notoriety, and if they don't have that Bigfoot film as their preeminent piece of evidence, they're nothing. The Bigfoot subject for these founding fathers was a money-making operation for them.
Oh, screw you. Screw you.
Beginning. They're all either dying or have died or very old people. And they've made a lot of money during their adult lifetime. Bob Gimlin. Who is Bob Gimlin?
Did you do your due diligence on him?
Yeah, this is starting to piss me off. I'm sorry, it is.
He'll give all the interviews he wants to Bigfoot believers.
Screw you. He's given interviews to others, not just Bigfoot believers. Reporters have asked him questions. Screw you. Referring to Bob Gimlin.
You would think, though, after he shot the film, he would have brought it back. Here's a photograph that...
Oh, no, he's talking about the what you call it? The arrest warrant for Roger Patterson for not returning the camera on time. I can see where that could be a problem, but really, it's still irrelevant to the film.
Certificate that you could receive if you...
Back in them days, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
I wonder how many of these things did people pay for this?
They must have paid for it to become an associate.
Wow.
Here we have a very curious drawing. It portrays a Bigfoot, which interestingly has breasts, similar to what is observable on Roger Patterson's Bigfoot, which shot on film in Bluff Creek. Roger Patterson had access to this photograph, to this drawing, because Patterson visited John Green in Canada in 1964. John Green was collecting many stories. In fact, he had collected the William Rose story. And so I think we can assume fairly that Roger Patterson knew the story of William Roe, had access to this drawing, or certainly had access to the written story about a female Bigfoot. And it's just curious that Roger Patterson's Bigfoot also has breasts. Isn't that?
Oh, well, that must mean that he made a female Bigfoot suit based on the William Rose sketch. Oh, that must be what that means. Oh, my goodness. You know, I've been supporting this film, and but I see it now. Oh, yes, I absolutely see it. Oh, yes, it's so clear to me now. It's so clear. Oh, yes. No, it's about it's about as clear as mud, if you ask me.
Interesting.
Yes. And I'm watching that now. I'm looking there and I'm looking at the picture here, and I'm saying to myself, wow.
This is a photograph of the actual truck that was used by Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin. Bob Gimlin owned this when they drove down to Bluff Creek, California, and spent several days down there looking for Bigfoot. What's interesting about this photograph is that it does show a compartment up here. And I had never seen this truck or a photograph of this truck when I interviewed Bob Hieronymus. But Bob Hieronymus told me that he remembers sleeping that first night he arrived in Bluff Creek, and he had met Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin at a campsite. He remembers sleeping in this little wooden alcove here at on the front of the truck. So I found that's interesting confirmatory evidence.
You bet it is.
But Bob.
No, it's not confirmatory. It's confirmatory evidence that Bob Hieronymus probably saw that truck on Bob Gimlin's property and decided he was going to insert himself into the Patterson-Gimlin film, story, and claim, oh, hey, I was sleeping up in this compartment right here, down at Bluff Creek. Well, he doesn't even know how to get to the film site.
Around the story was true.
So now you've seen the film, touted to be evidence of an unknown primate. You've met Ray Wallace, the man responsible for founding the myth, Roger Patterson, who took advantage of the myth, and Bob Gimlin, the all but silent partner. You've seen the tracks Patterson collected and their resemblance to known fakes. You've seen testimony from Philip Morris and Bob Hieronymus, and from those who saw the suit after the fact. You've met the investigative reporter and a duped investor in Patterson's scheme. All we can do is show you the evidence and encourage you to see the facts as we present them. But there are some of you who will never let go of the belief that this film was real, despite seeing its faults.
Well, you know, I'm not going to let go of the belief that this film is real because there has been more corroborative evidence that supports the film than not. There's more corroborating evidence that supports the film than discredits it.
Falsehoods displayed before your eyes. That is, of course, your decision.
Yeah.
But remember, belief in something doesn't make it real.
Well, all I'll say is that thankfully this is finished, just about finished. We're talking about almost an hour and a half. Just the things I go through for you folks. But I'm glad you stuck with me for this long, you know. And I used to be one of those who would vacillate. Yes, I used to vacillate between thinking the film could be a hoax, then thinking that it's real. Then every 5 years I would do that. But you know, I've made a decision in recent years that no. I'm sticking with the film. It's what's in it is real, 100%. You know. And yes, I realized a lot of the language I used was a little strong, but it was necessary. You know, I'm sticking with the Patterson-Gimlin film. What's in it is real. Bob Gimlin's not a liar. He's telling the truth. What's in the film is a genuine Sasquatch. It's not a guy in a suit. All the analysis that has been done on this film it shows that there's a certain degree of reality to it. It shows that it's real. I do not personally think that there is anything that shows it to be a hoax. Now, could I be wrong? Oh, yeah, I could be wrong. I'm not going to sit here and say that, yes, I'm absolutely right. I'm not. But from what I have seen, and the things that I have experienced with this film, and meeting Bob Gimlin, and seeing the different analyses that have been done on the film, I can only conclude that that's real Sasquatch in that film. Case closed. And I'm sure that all of my audience will agree. And thank you so much for tuning into this video. I know it's a marathon watch, but trust me, it'll be worth it once it's finished. So y'all be good, or be good at it.